John Mackey here, Capital Flow, and I'm joined again by Neil Hughes, managing partner with Baker Tilly. Neil, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, John. No problem.
Listen, we want to talk today mainly around businesses and employees getting back to work and how they're going to find getting back to work. But just before we get into that, into the detail of that, Neil, just a general question. If you take it, there's full restrictions hopefully lifted by the 10th of August, and if this all started, say, going back to mid-March, we're pretty much over halfway through this cycle, if you want to call it now, this process. How do you think we performed in general?
It's been. Country? I think look, one of the key things in the last few days is that the statistics are definitely moving in the right direction. So from the point of view of the number of deaths, we did a day there a few days ago with 0 deaths. The number of ICU admissions, hospital admissions. There are certain counties now, including your own home county, John, whereby it's understood there's absolutely 0 cases now in the County Wexford hospitals, for example. So this clearly, from a health point of view, it seems like there's a lot of confidence now coming back into people that we have done a good job and that we're moving on into the worst is behind us. I think that's the key thing, and that is essential from the point of view of confidence in business owners and confidence in consumers. That's going to be absolutely essential now as we move into the recovery phase. But John, as we said, I think the last time we chatted, it's much easier to close a business down and mothball a business than try and crank it back up again, try and reopen it. And that's where the real challenge, I think, is going to come for a lot of people. But I think the central thing to think about is making sure that, first of all, your team is comfortable in coming back, and that the right focus on health and safety is there. There's going to be no one size fits all, which we might have a chat about, but also then that your customers are really comfortable coming in, because if there isn't that confidence there, it's really, I think we're at nothing. So that's where the focus, I think, now has to be in terms of business owners. And I think, I don't know about you, John, but I'm thinking, there still hopefully will be quite a lot of money in the economy, and on that basis, the optimistic part of me is saying, this could be quite a sharp bounce back if we get this next phase right.
Well, I think it's always important to keep optimistic about these things as well. And I think that you're right, like that. I suppose people, in terms of like holidays, people haven't been going on holidays, so maybe they have that money to spend domestically this year. And then from a corporate perspective, I think we've seen in the news yesterday, they're talking about the probability, not possibility, of negative savings rates. So will that kind of maybe force corporates and businesses who maybe might have surplus cash into investing and maybe looking at opportunities from an entrepreneurial perspective, mergers and acquisitions, just everything like that. I'd be like yourself. I would be mildly optimistic as well that, look, hopefully we will see a quick bounce back from this.
Yeah, and I think on the last occasion, the recession saw the fiscal stimulus really went into the balance sheets of broken banks. So the money was lost. So there was a huge amount of funding that was available. It drained out of the economy because it was going to backfill losses that had been made by enormous gambles on property, typically in terms of the banking sector. This time, it's totally different because the fiscal stimulus has gone into people's back pockets in terms of the subsidies, in terms of the reopening grants now for businesses. So in other words, the money hasn't been lost on this occasion. It's still in the economy. And in fact, John, the reality is I know that there are certain people who've actually managed to save money during the crisis. It hasn't affected them negatively because of the fact that they're not spending and their income was subsidized or their income was intact. They have been saving, they've been building up cash. So that's a good sign, I think, from the point of view of businesses reopening. And that's why people should think, okay, this is going to be nothing like 2009, 2010. And I think we as business people, I think we should adopt that and stick to it. And, we should be in the hope business. We should be really hopeful here. I think that this is going to be a sharper bounce back if we get it right.
Very good. I like that. Positive thinking, as I say. Okay, if we just look at it then from a business owner's perspective with regards, I know some of them will have reopened over the last week or two, and then going over the next few weeks, whether it's, the sites, factory units, retail shops, office premises like yours and like ours and Capital Flows, there's a lot to consider, and there's a lot of challenges I feel to overcome. From an owner's perspective first, if we look at it, like, what do you see as I suppose, what are those challenges and how to overcome them?
Yeah, well, what we're advising our clients, and it's a key kind of slogan about the reopening phase, is that no one size will fit all, because every individual in your team, every one of your employees will have a different kind of factors that are at play for them. They may commute, or they may drive, or they may be cycling in, and they're now figuring out, okay, how am I going to get to work if they're, for example, they were commuting on a busy Dart or Lewis or bus or whatever. They're trying to figure that out. They may have an underlying health issue. You may not even be aware of the underlying health issue that they or a member of their family has. And they just may have a different appetite to risk. Some people are quite, they're quite relaxed about the crisis. Others are terrified about it. And what we're saying is that there's no point in just sending out one across the board new protocol for a return to work. You need to do the hard yards of actually speaking to each one of those employees, so that you make sure you get it right, and you make sure you don't alienate, some of the key people of your business. And that's a really important step. That's the first thing. And then secondly, then there are businesses, depending on what sector you're in, obviously, there are businesses whereby you have to make it welcoming for your customers and clients to come back into your premises. And that's going to involve the infrastructure of the business. And that's where some planning has to come in terms of social distancing, in terms of the use of meeting rooms, in terms of the use of your reception. If it's a retail, how do you facilitate queuing, etc.? Can you have one door in and a side door for people to get out, so that therefore they don't have to run into each other? You have an entrance and an exit. And I think it's very important now that those plans are being made, because this is imminent now, John. The 8th of June, we have the next phase in terms of reopening the economy. And at that stage, we're looking at, for example, people who can work largely on their own, 2 meters away from each other. If you have your own office, for example, the regulations will allow some of those offices to start reopening. So this is really imminent. This is going to come thick and fast now over the next few weeks. So a detailed plan around that, communicated not just broadly or widely, but communicated individually then amongst the different team members you have, we think is going to be a really important factor then for businesses to get back open again.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And even just to hone in on one point that you're saying, and the need to actually look at each individual member of your team, also as difficult as that be, and obviously for a larger organisation. But I really think that, as you said, that every individual is different from their means of getting to work, how far they have to come, where how they get there, and then as you said, their appetite to risk. Some people will be just comfortable to come in and trust the system. Other people will take a bit more convincing. And I think
John, in terms of some of the premises, by the way, people who have a larger premises have a huge advantage, and people in regional locations, they tend to have larger premises, whereas some of the city centre premises are much tighter. And I suppose, speaking from experience here, in terms of, we have an office in Dublin, and we have an office also in County Wexford. And there's a huge difference in terms of the capacity. And I know you guys in Capital Flow, you have 2 offices as well with different issues around them. So, I think that's a big issue as well, in terms of how much space do you actually have, and do you need to stagger? Do you need to put in place to stagger the hours that people are coming back in, just to make sure that it works?
Yeah, and I think that issue of space, I think, we can talk about another day. There's a lot to talk about in it, but I think it's going to really open up the whole decentralisation. Not from a government perspective maybe, but from a business perspective. I think we've seen that working from home works. Obviously, It suits some people, it doesn't. But as I said, like I'm down in Wexford here. We have space in our house. We're out in the country. I have my own space. I can work in it comfortably. If you're in an apartment in the middle of Dublin, maybe it's a bit more difficult because you don't have that space. But maybe it might see people moving out of the city of Dublin and spreading out over the country, if work can be done as easily anywhere in the country. So look, that's another day's talk, as they say. Just Neil, I suppose, looking at it from an employee's perspective, I think we discussed it there in terms of their needs and whatever. But purely, like, say, if you're looking at it, on public transport alone, if you take it, look at the Lewis line, that's something I would have used. The Green Line coming through Dundrum, from 7:30 in the morning to 9:30, 10. That is packed. It's washed up against each other. If you take it now, I presume if it's 2 meters, even if it's reduced to 1 meter, social distancing, the capacity is I don't know, forget half, quarters, 1/8, whatever. You go that. So the thing then is people getting to work. And okay, if you say in Dublin we cycle, okay, the cars, it's not practical for everyone to drive because the pollution and also just the pure traffic. But even if it was possible, like parking, where can you leave your bikes? Like, I think that's going to be a huge challenge for someone to sort out. And I think it's something that business owners probably need to.
You do. I think business owners are going to have to be really open to the idea of different working hours, because the obvious answer to the commute, the rush hour commute, is that rush hour stretches over between, say, I don't know, 6:30 and 11 a.m. rather than stretching from 7:30 to 9 a.m. And I think that's probably going to be the answer to that, is that, individual conversations will mean that somebody will say, listen, it's okay for you to work 11, work through your lunch and work through 6 or 6:30 or whatever, or else start much earlier and avoid the packed public transport that is what we're used to in urban areas in Ireland. And that's an obvious solution. And I think, being a cyclist myself, I think that's a great solution for those who are within, it has to be within sort of say 5 to 8K to be practical for most people. If it's beyond that, if it's 10K plus, it's really only going to be keen cyclists that will take advantage of that. But it will capture quite a lot of people. There is investment going in, I know, in terms of some of the infrastructure of the state. It'll be a big help if the Greens do a deal and come into government as soon as possible, because that infrastructure will probably be accelerated, I would have thought, and it could be a golden era for cycling. Employers have to be open to that. Employees are going to have to be open to that as well. Employees are also going to have to, I think, they're going to have to take their own personal responsibility, and they're going to have to accept the fact that, the businesses have taken a hammering, and employees have their own responsibility to contribute to the recovery. And they're going to have to be creative. They're going to have to be flexible. And I think they will, John. I think, people will warm to the task. So I'm optimistic that we can work this out in some flexible way, how we get back together.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think you just nailed it on the head there. I think businesses need to be creative. I think that the old phrase of that's the way it was always done is definitely gone out the window. I think we have to come up with new ways of doing things, and look at I think the what do I call it, the staged flexi time, that's the staggered kind of not even shift work, but just as you said, trying to get rid of that rush hour or rush hour and a half that it is, and spread it out over the day. And the working from home will help that, so it might only need to come in 1 or 2 days a week, and I think that all those things will come to will be required to be talked through. And as you said, every business will be different as well, but from your own perspective, Neil, when are you seeing your guys coming back into your?
Well, it's going to be different. We our position is that in terms of our Enniscorthy office, we have the ability to work in individual offices, and we've got a lot more space. So we will likely be qualifying in terms of return in June, whereas the ultimate return to work for all workers in the economy is the 10th of August. And we've never actually closed as a business. No more than yourself, John. A lot of what the financial services that we provide are deemed to be essential services. In terms of our restructuring practice, for example, in terms of our payroll services, these are all essential services. So we have, a skeleton crew. I'm just looking around where I am now. Right now, we have 4 or 5 people in, and there's normally 60, obviously, in the office. So we have people coming in and out. We've never actually closed. But I think it's going to be a phased return over the summer, taking into account the regulations. And it's being driven by health and safety. And, the employees of the business, they expect you to be taking that as your number one priority. And that's the one thing I think is a really important message from today, is that if you put the health and safety of your team at the very forefront of what you are doing, and then everything else kind of falls into place after that. But that's how you will get the confidence and support of all of the team members in your business, which you're going to need. You're going to need that support in order to make sure that you springboard back out of the crisis into this recovery phase, which hopefully, with a bit of momentum, John, will take people right the way into 2021, and we'll never look back, hopefully. Hopefully.
Well, listen, Neil, thanks very much. That was really, really interesting and insightful. I hope your Shamrock Rovers jersey hasn't offended any other Dublin club, suppose, or any fans that may be watching.
Well, hopefully not. Yeah, it was given to us after the successful restructuring back 15 years ago. They gave us a frame jersey, which we very much appreciated. So it's hung there since.
15 years. There's a quick 15 years. Well, listen, Neil, thanks again. And look, we'll chat again soon. Cheers, man.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.